How y'all doing? So we're actually back again with two more chapters of the Genesis Bible study or the discussion. So we're going to be going through chapter 38, and this is going to be Judah and Tamar. Now, as you guys already know, we've been previously talking about Joseph and his brothers. Now, for a reason, they've actually inserted this story in between, where Joseph is in 37 and Joseph in chapter 39. So this is put there for a reason. And the reason is because that while Joseph was in Egypt and going through the things he's going through, this story is happening at the same exact time. So on the same timeline, during the same few years, Judah is, going through his situation with Tamar, and Joseph is going through the situation in the pit and different things like that. So they're happening in a similar fashion, that makes sense, at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to read chapter 38. We're going to talk about some key things that we've seen in those chapters, have a little discussion about those. Then, as always, we're going to do the next chapter. And then, if you guys have any prayer requests, any comments, concerns, definitely leave them in the comment section. And please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. We want to continue to get the message out there as far as possible, So without further ado, it says, it came to pass at this time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adulamite whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. And he married her and went into her. So she conceived and bore a son. He called his name She conceived again and bore her son, and she called his name Onan. And she conceived yet again and bore a son, and called his name Shelah. He was at Chezib when she bore him. Then Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. And Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother. But Onan knew that the heir would not be his, and it came to pass when he went into his brother's wife that he admitted on the ground, lest he should give an heir to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord. Therefore he killed him also. Then Judah said to Tamar his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house till my son Shelah is grown. For he said, lest he also die like his brothers. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Now in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with the veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place which was on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, because she had covered her face. Then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So she said, what will you give me that you may come into me? And he said, I will send a young goat from the flock. So she said, will you give me a pledge until you send it? Then he said, what pledge shall I give you? So she said, your signet and cord and your staff that is in your hand. Then he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. So she arose and went away and laid aside her veil and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend the Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, where is the harlot who was openly by the roadside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. So he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. Also the men of the place said there was no harlot in this place. Then Judah said, let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed. For I sent this young goat, and you have not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after that Judah was told, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry. So Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man to whom there belong, I am with child. And she said, please determine whose these are, the signet, the cord, and staff. So Judah acknowledged them and said, she has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Shelah my son, and he never knew her again. Now it came to pass at the time for giving birth that, behold, twins were in her womb. And so it was when she was giving birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, this one came out first. Then it happened, as he drew back his hand, that his brother came out unexpectedly. And she said, how did you break through? This breach be upon you. Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand. His name was called Zerah. So that consists of Genesis chapter 38. And there's a lot of, a lot of craziness in this chapter. It's fun though. Like, you know what's always fun about the Old Testament? People always look for, and I'm talking about believers. If you're a non-believer, this doesn't apply to you, so don't get offended. But like for believers, are we always looking for a way to entertain us? Like they want to watch different movies and horror movies and all this different stuff because you think like the gospel is not fun enough. And it's like, did you read the Old Testament? The Old Testament is full of so much drama, so much craziness. You cannot have fun reading it or listening to it and things like that. At least that's from my perspective. But I do want to start covering some of the things that I saw in chapter 38 that were pretty fun, pretty good discussion topics. So the first thing I see is Judah departed from his brothers to see a friend. Okay. So he departed from his brothers to see a friend. And it was during this time that he met a woman and he married her. And it says that there were a total of 3 children, 3 boys that were conceived during their marriage. So what I'm taking from that is obviously sometimes when we're in our life and we're living life a certain way. I actually preached a message on this I think a year ago, when it was like elevation requires separation, right? So you have to separate to elevate. At times when God purposed you for something or calls you to something, even though you're around certain people, all that God wants to do in your life is not going to be accomplished around those same people. Now, he may have to disconnect you from those people and reconnect you later, or he may disconnect you from those people for good, just so his purposes can be, so his purposes can flourish in your life. So we see something going on similar with Judah, is that he had to leave his brothers to see a friend, right? And it was during this time that he found a woman and married her. So he's not even going looking for a woman. He's not searching for a woman. He's actually going to see a friend. So he's doing a completely different activity. And during this different activity, he catches the eye of this woman, or she catches his eye, however it worked. And he married her. So sometimes when it comes to life and your purpose, God will have to remove you from a certain situation so that his next level can be achieved, right? I know some of us can say that we grew up in a certain place and we had a high school sweetheart or middle school sweetheart and we're still married to this day. That's a beautiful story. But some of us, we was doing something else. We were doing something completely different. Like you might have been on a job, you might be in the military, you might be in Germany or France or something. And that's the woman that you end up marrying. So God guided you on that path so that you can find the woman that you're supposed to marry. That's how you take that perspective. So in the same way, Judah had to leave his brothers just so he can find the woman that he's supposed to marry. And because he married this woman, it wasn't that they married and they were unfruitful. They had 3 children. So this is like a confirmation that God is in it. God allowed her to bear fruit, right? Because, God is, we've seen it in the Old Testament at different times where women were barren. She wasn't barren. He went into her and they had children and then did it again, had another child, had another child. So they were having multiple children. They were very fruitful in this marriage, which to me confirms that God was in it and God probably guided him on that path so that he can meet the woman, so that he can have those children. So that's the first point I have, is that obviously, elevation at times requires separation. So sometimes God will change what's familiar to you so that he can get that next level to be accomplished in your life. Because let's say maybe Judah would have stayed with his brothers and he would have never met the woman because he was so comfortable with his brothers. So he had to be pushed out in a different direction, but he could see the woman and then, have different situations occur so that the next purpose of God will come to pass. Anything you want to discuss with that one?
Yeah, I just want to briefly say, because I like how you put that with, they had to be pushed out, and sometimes God pushes us out, and so when God pushes us out, it's a little bit different from what the natural man will perceive, because like a job, like you're on a job, and all of a sudden, Holy Spirit lead you out of it, right? To do ministry. To do whatever it is. I see people. I heard Creflo Dollar, and I'm not patting Cref on the back, but I heard him a few years back say he was a doctor and God called him into ministry, and he left ministry. He left his job as a doctor with his own company to start ministry. I was talking to another guy just to bring it home. Elderly guy, 96 years old here in Houston, Texas, who said he had a great business going on. This guy's, 96 years old, and he's telling me a story how he was very successful before he started ministry. So when he left his level of success with what he was doing, his wife was like, "Are you serious?" And he's saying, "God, I feel like God is calling me." He's a new Christian. Feeling God calling him. And so a lot of people didn't agree with his decision, but he became very successful. And now, even today, he has a church that he started, church still going, big church here in Houston, Texas. But it just shows the way God moves. Sometimes he'll push us out of situations. He'll push us out of relationships. Sometimes, relationship might be toxic. He'll push us out. He'll push us out. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yes. And just because you brought that up, let's make that a disclaimer. God will push you out of a relationship that is not his will, but not a marriage. Not a marriage, but a relationship, right? So let's make sure that's clear, because we don't want nobody thinking, well, God's calling me the man. Oh, that ain't God. That's something else. But outside of that, let's move on to this next point. And this is where it starts to get deep, because I have like a good amount of notes on these next couple points. So the second thing is 2 of his children were killed because of wickedness. All right. So it says that his first child was killed. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. The Bible doesn't tell us exactly what he did that was wicked, but we just know he died. And then the second child, he was supposed to, marry the first brother's leftover wife, the widow. He's supposed to marry her and have a child by her and stuff like that. And his whole intention, his heart was wrong. You know what I'm saying? His heart was wrong. So he ended up doing wrong in the sight of the Lord, and he got killed too. So Onan, which was the guy that was supposed to, the second brother, the middle child, Onan rejected the commandment of his father. And instead of him marrying Tamar as he was commanded, he fornicated with her, which is sin. Now, obviously, we have to take it back to Leviticus, because we didn't get to Leviticus yet. So there's no law. God didn't give them a specific law to follow. So maybe they don't even know what's right or wrong completely. But I'm sure because they've been in these Gentile lands long enough, through the Holy Spirit, they probably know, like, okay, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing that. So basically, effectively, that's what Onan did. A lot of people see that, and they come to the term of he basically masturbated. But no, he didn't masturbate. That's not what happened here. He fornicated. That's basically what he did. He made her a sinner. He made himself. He basically made both of them sinner. Because Judah wasn't wicked in his thought. His thought was righteous. His thought was redeem the woman and have a child for your brother. That's a righteous thing. And when you look at Leviticus, that's actually something that God gave them as a law. When a brother of yours has a wife and they don't have any children, he dies prematurely, you're supposed to take her and actually have a child with her. That was the law back then, So this is something that's going to carry on. Like Judah was the first to establish this, but this is something that's going to carry on throughout Israelite heritage for some time. And that's how we get the story of Ruth and Boaz. That's what happened with Ruth and Boaz. He redeemed her, right? So the way I look at it is when Onan, his father Judah commands him to go into his brother's wife and have a child. His mindset was already wrong, because he was thinking, I don't want to do this because I don't want to raise an heir to my brother. If I'm going to have sex with her, I want to have an heir of myself. So he's telling his dad Judah, okay, I'll do it. He's agreeing to do it, right? And he has Tamar believing he's going to do it. So they're both on the same mindset. Okay, he's going to redeem me. Everything's going to be good. But in his mind, he's already thinking he's trying to be slick. So from jump, his intentions were impure. If he had no intention of keeping the commandment of his dad, he should have left Tamar alone. So this shows you that he was sinning from jump. It was iniquity. He had already planned this out. He didn't just go into her and just start thinking of it all of a sudden. Okay, if I do this, then she's going to have a child with my brother. Okay, I don't want to do this. This had already been thought up. So he had already thought about this thing, already made the different decisions, and God was looking. God see every detail. So not only did you make yourself a sinner by fornicating with this woman, you made her a sinner too. Because she was intended on marrying you and then, having a family built up, not you turning both y'all into fornicators. So God killed them because of what he did. He led her into fornication, and he fornicated with her himself. So just to bring that whole point home is that Onan was worried only about himself, and he wasn't worried about God's purposes, right? So you contrast him with a later person in this story, which is Joseph, right? So imagine Joseph, right? We were just talking about Joseph in chapter 37. So let's contrast Onan and Joseph for a second. And oh no, not actually, forgive me, not Joseph in the dream, not dream Joseph, but Joseph from Mary, basically the father of Jesus. So contrast him with Joseph, who did choose to honor and marry Mary, even though she was pregnant at the time. So it's not the same exact situation, but think of it like this, right? Tamar was married to his brother. They probably shared relations. They had something going on, and his mindset, he couldn't wrap himself around doing what would have been the right thing at the time. He just didn't want to do it, which is nothing wrong with that. But then the right response would have been leave the girl alone. Don't trick her into thinking that you're going to do it and then just look out for yourself while you do it. So that's basically what he did. And then Joseph, even though she didn't have sex with nobody, she still is pregnant. So that shame that's come upon Joseph, he could have just like, okay, I'm just going to divorce you. And then I'm going to go on about my life. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I got my own carpentry business. I'm going to be good. But Joseph, considering God, he was considering God and himself. He was even considering Mary, because the Bible says that he was going to divorce her. But then he was like, I don't want to divorce her openly. Like, I don't want to be like, you nasty, you fornicated, you committed adultery. He didn't want to make it a public spectacle. So he went alone. He was going to do it in private. And that's when he went back home and the angel gave him that dream. So because Joseph cared about God enough, he honored the woman enough to not blow up on her. That's how God's purposes were able to get established in Joseph's life. So he chose not to dishonor Mary, but to honor her and to marry her, even though she was pregnant at the time. And what's so good about Joseph, like when you contrast these two men, is that Joseph, he even chose not to sleep with Mary until Jesus was born. So even though it's not his child, he really don't know where it came from. You say it came from God, but at this time, he don't know that. He's just like, this is crazy. But after after his mind, he reconciles with the situation. He understands the dreams that God has given him. He even chooses, I'm not even going to try to seek my own, because that's basically what I'm saying. Onan was seeking his own when he went inside to Tamar. He wasn't looking to marry her. He was looking to just get his rocks off. That's what we say. He's looking to get his rocks off. And Joseph, he was not even thinking about himself. He's like, okay, if this is the son of God, I'm going to honor this man. I'm not even going to touch you until you marry, till you have him, and then you wean him off of the breast and all that stuff. Then we'll start building our family. So effectively, Joseph was an honorable man. That's all I'm trying to say. But anything I know it's a lot we can talk about with this situation. So give us something, bro. You got to give us something. I know you got something for this one.
No, man, you bringing it, man. You hitting every point. So I'm just sitting back because I never thought of it that way. So I'm just sitting back learning too. So continue.
Okay. All right. So the third point that I actually wrote down was that Judah, as you know, Judah is the father. So he promises his third child to Tamar, which is Shelah. So he promises his third son to Tamar once he becomes of age, but he did not keep his promise. So this is not something deep. This is just a detail we want to make sure that we understand. So Tamar is under the impression that once this child becomes of age, then you're going to marry him to me, and then I'll still be able to be redeemed and so on and so forth. But then it comes to the point where she sees that Shelah is now of age. He's now at the age of being a man or whatever that age was. And she saw that you didn't marry him to me. So now it's like, you promised me something, you're not keeping your promise. So I want you to keep that in mind, because we're going to see Judah is a wicked person. He's not righteous. He's horrible. You wouldn't think that, right? That Jesus came through the tribe of Judah. You would think he'd be a good man. He's terrible. He's horrible. And I'm going to tell you why. So he's already broke a promise, right? So far, it didn't seem too bad what he has done so far, but now he's broken a promise to this woman. And we got to know she's desperate. No woman wants to be a widow. You don't want to be a widow, you know what I mean? Especially not the young widow, because now you just spend the rest of your life just dreaming, and you know what I mean? Like, if you're an old widow, it's different, because had the best years is behind you. When you're young, like that sucks. I mean, I love God and you should love God too, but man, like, don't leave me by myself. Like, this is hard. This is tough, right? So that's gonna bring me to the fourth point, because Tamar, she ended up dressing up as a harlot, and she tricked him, right? But she did it because of this. She did it because he broke his promise to her. She didn't do it seeking her own. She did it because he broke his promise. He wouldn't marry her to his child like he said he was going to. So when she saw that that wasn't going to happen, of course she tried to accomplish it on her own. But I want to show you something that's very interesting. And this is the fourth point. Why, and this is something we got to discuss as well. Why did Tamar feel like Judah would fall for her scheme? So just take out any other extra points. Why does Tamar feel like Judah would fall for her scheme? Because it says that she got word that her father-in-law was going to deal with his livestock, his sheep. So he was going up to Timnah, and she's like, okay, he's coming across where I live. So she decides she's gonna put on her little sexy garments or whatever and present herself a certain way. But why does she feel like he's gonna be the one to go for that? Because he couldn't have been the only man that passed her by in the town. She just knew that he's so wicked that if I just show myself, he gonna go crazy for me. And that's exactly what happened. So that's showing you something about Judah's character. It's showing you that maybe the people outside, maybe the people that know Judah knew he was something else. So maybe they thought of him as a wicked person. But you don't just try to scheme somebody something they don't do. It's just like consider the devil. When the devil's trying to attack your purpose and your plan, he doesn't just use random temptation. He uses something he's seen you do. He's been studying you for years. He's seeing you watching pornography. So he's going to try to tempt you with that. He's not going to tempt you with something you're not tempted by. He's going to try to tempt you with something that you've seen in before. And the same thing is like, why did she think that Judah was going to go for this if that's not his character? So that's just something I noticed. And then remember, I want to tell you something else. So that said, first of all, that says something about his morality. But you got to remember he was married at this time. So he was married to a woman named Shula. So the Bible says that he was visiting this town because of a funeral. Remember, it wasn't Shula that died. His wife didn't die. It was his wife's daughter. So his daughter-in-law died. He's still married. He's still married. This still married man goes through the town looking for a harlot. That tells you all you need to know, right? So he's still married at this time. He's supposed to be grieving his daughter-in-law, but grief, much like anger, I'm just going to put this out there, grief, much like anger, can make a person vulnerable. He still got bad character, but if you want to look at the positive, some kind of positive way in that, is he was grieving. So maybe grief, it lowered his morality, or I don't know, something. But this is the point. Like, he's married and he's making these kind of decisions. So she already knew what kind of person he was, or she wouldn't have dressed up in that kind of dress and covered herself and knew that he was going to try to do what he did with her. This was a scheme that she played. She knew it was going to happen. She knew how it was going to work. Anything you want to comment on that? With those next 2 points?
No, I mean, you touched on everything. I guess the emphasis is, to know the schemes of the enemy, that he knows us. He's watched us. He's, and he's looking for our weak spots. And so the emphasis would be to have strong character, where I think the Bible kind of alludes to that even outsiders, would recognize, that we've been with Jesus, because like for instance, my past, just bringing my own personal experiences with my past. People know I used to be on drugs. People knew that I was, stealing and robbing and stuff like that. But now when people see me, they see something totally different. They're like, wait a minute, this dude, something about you changed. They just can't picture the old me in my life today. So so it's a whole total different thing, but it's because of character, and character really is seen more so when we're behind the scenes. You say this a lot, Devin, about God watching what we do when we behind closed doors, right? So that's all I just wanted to emphasize, because it may be somebody out there, that's just watching, and that's what I took up from that right there too, is, let God continue to work on character, so go ahead, bro, you got it.
All right, so that actually leads us to the 5th point. And it's the fact that she already felt like he was going to fall for her scheme, but then it says Judah turned to her, right? And that's in the text. Let's see if we can find that part. Let's see. This is verse 15. So it says, when Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot because she had covered her face. Now he's married. He thinks she's a harlot. What's that's going to tell you? You married. You think she's a whore. You're going to go the other way. I don't need none of that. I don't need none of that business, right? But he does the opposite. So he does the opposite. Verse 16, it says, then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come into you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So this reminds me of Proverbs chapter 7, what Solomon is saying about like the harlot, her footsteps lead to hell. Now, I'm not saying that Tamar was on that type of level. Solomon was referring to like whores, like career whores, like all they do is look out for men and snatch them up and do that deed and basically get them closer to hell, that kind of stuff. That's not what she was doing at this time, but she did play the harlot for this moment. But the thing that I want to focus on is that he saw her out in the town doing this, and he could have avoided her. He could have just went around her, but he turned to her. So you know our God, he tells, I think it's in Deuteronomy or Exodus, where he's like, and when you're out in that path, go straight. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right. This is what he's talking about. Don't look to the left and do what they doing. Don't look to the right and do what they doing. You just go straight and focus on me. Because once you turn to the left or to the right, bad things happen. And that's why that word turn, it's just like, I got to write that down because that was something he turned to her. She didn't talk to him and say, hey, you handsome, come on over here. It wasn't like that. Like, that's what Solomon was talking about. The woman that's showing herself and telling you to come over there. He's talking about you looking for her. And that's what he did. He was on that path, going to deal with his sheep. And he just turned to her like, ooh, that looked like something I need. Okay, can I sleep with you? Like, bro, what kind of, that ain't even no pickup line. Let's be real. What was that? So it looked like to me that Judah might have had a lust problem. I mean, I hope that's okay to say, but that's what it looks like, right? So Judah turned to her by the way. This means that his lust drew him from his path, right? So his lust drew him from the path. Anything you want to comment on that? Nope.
No, go ahead. I'm reading with you. I'm going to say something in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. So moving on, the next one is just that it seems that Judah was more concerned about his reputation, right? So what I mean by that is after he did the deed with her, he gave her his signet, his cord, his staff. He was more concerned about his reputation. And the reason I got this because I have a study Bible. So it says like in the little subtext that basically when he's going to look for Tamar to give her the payment for the sex that he had with her, because she's playing a harlot or whatever, he was going to give her the goat and she was going to give him back his property that she kept. It's kind of like when you rent a car. You give them like certain gift, like I think it's like the ID or something like that, and they keep it so that you have to bring the car back. They don't just give you their property without nothing to keep you to, because you can just steal the car and run off. So they keep something of yours so that you will be more willing to give the car back and then you get your stuff back. Or like a pawn shop, like when you take something on loan, same thing, right? They'll take something of yours and keep it as like a down payment as something that you have for theirs. And then when you bring that back, they'll give you whatever you gave them. Right? So that's basically what's happening here. But once he's looking for Tamar, because he's already slept with her, he got the goat. He sends his friend to go give her the goat. And he's like, I can't find this woman. I don't know who she is or where she came from. And nobody knows where she is. So in that little subtext, it says that it would have been shameful to like keep looking for a harlot. So I could just imagine in my mind what was happening is that his friend was going around like, hey, where's the harlot that was right here? Where's the harlot that was right here? What my master's looking for the harlot that was right here. And they're like, if your master is Judah, then hold on. So that made Judah this kind of person. So that's probably hurt. He already got a bad reputation. If Tamar thinks he's going to fall for the scheme, but it's like now it's just reinforcing that amongst everybody because they're like, why is he looking for her? Why are you even looking for a harlot? What are you doing? That's probably what they're thinking. So it looked like he's more concerned about his reputation. So he ends up letting Tamar keep his signet, cord, and staff. So he's like, man, you know what? Just let her have it. It's all good. I don't even care. Like, it is what it is. He probably thought it's all over. Ain't it never going to come back to bite me in the butt. It is what it is. Just stop looking for her and just let's preserve our reputation. Let's save face. Right? So this actually leads me to my 7th point where it says, Judah exposed his own wickedness. And like, this is crazy because he had already done some things that we see that's kind of off as far as character, but he exposes his own wickedness by desiring to punish Tamar for her sins. Because it says that when he got word that she played the harlot and got pregnant, he's like, let's burn her. Take her, bring out the house and let's burn her. Like, You gonna burn your daughter-in-law? Now, this the same daughter-in-law you promised your sons to. And I'm not saying that what she did ain't wrong, but Jesus, that seemed like the punishment don't fit the crime. Especially you out here living nasty, and you didn't get burned. Why she got to get burned? That's what I saw. I knew it was a patriarchal society at the time, but it's just like that's crazy, bro. Like that's not righteous judgment. That's nonsense. So that exposes his own wickedness. So he wants to punish her for her sins while not recognizing his own sins. Anything you want to comment on that before we get to the last two?
That's what that was the same thought. You just mentioned it. That was the same thought I was thinking on him not, recognizing his own sins. Because we see that a lot, right? People get mad at somebody for what they did, what they feel they did, and they might have contributed to, what the person did, but they're not self-evaluating. So that's just my point. We got to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. Always be seeing where we went wrong. That's why it's good to have a strong convictions. That's all I got to say.
Amen. So that actually leads me to my last 2 points. And number 8 is the fact that though Judah lost 2 sons conceived by Shelah, and I want to make sure that this is like, I want you guys to see this in a positive light. So we're done talking negative about Judah. We've already established the kind of person he was. Now we want to talk about something more positive. So these last 2 points will talk something more positive. So though Judah lost his 2 sons, remember, because he had 3 sons by the lady Shelah, and 2 of them got killed by God because of wickedness. He lost 2 sons that he conceived with Shelah, but he gained 2 sons by Tamar because they had twins, Perez and Zerah. So he lost 2 sons and he gained 2 sons back. So he still had the same 3 children, if that makes sense. He started that journey with 3 children, and then he ended the journey with 3 children. Then the last point is that Tamar tricked Judah, right? She deceived him a little bit. She tricked him into redeeming her and raising up an heir to her own firstborn son. So basically what that means is, remember how when Judah was talking to his son, Onan, he was like, I want you to go into her and then raise up an heir for your brother. It said that Onan didn't want to do it, and that's why he got killed, because he basically fornicated with her. He had the wrong, his heart was wrong. He never intended to do what was right, what he had promised to do. So she was looking for a guardian redeemer. She's basically like Ruth. She's like Ruth. She's lost, and she needs someone to redeem her because it's a patriarchal society. She don't have a job. She can't make any money. She don't have any land. She's living with her parents. She literally needs to get out of the house. She just was married, and now she's just stuck, going to be a widow for the rest of her life. And eventually her parents going to die. She's not going to have nowhere to belong. So she's looking for a redeemer, right? So she tricks Judah into redeeming her and raising up an heir to his own firstborn son. So I just thought that was a little bit ironic that he tried to use his middle child to do it with Tamar so that they could have an heir for the firstborn son. And that didn't even work out. And the third son didn't even have nothing to do with Tamar. He ended up being the one to raise up an heir for his firstborn son. Ain't that crazy? To me, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. I thought that was pretty crazy. But just want to bring it home with, that's actually similar to what Boaz did for Ruth, except Boaz redeemed Ruth willingly. So Ruth didn't trick him. It was a willing thing, but that's because of the Levitical law. Like, so when Ruth came out, they already had the Levitical law, and it was actually in the commandments that this is supposed to happen. But yeah, that's all I got for chapter 38. Very eventful. We learned a lot about Judah, so anything you want to talk about concerning that?
No, man, you brought out so much. This is good for anybody who's watching. Man, because I done been to seminary with 3 different seminaries, bro. And I've studied Genesis, and I've studied, I've read through the story with Judah and Tamar. But you brought out some points I had never even thought. The comparison of, it kind of shows how we should live with the life of Joseph, with character and what we should not do. And the sinful nature of our decisions. Because, yeah, I mean, seeing all up in that thing right there, yeah, I've never seen it away. So you broke it down for me, man. So bless you. You can go ahead with the next chapter though. I'm gonna go back and study it a little bit more since you pointed out a few things. So
All right, if you would definitely do us the honor of reading through chapter 39.
all right, so let me stop it and restart recording again for 39.